It's almost like boxing with a stick. I can use both ends of the stick. It's a very close range system with a long range weapon, and that kind of gives them a different perspective on things. The non-recreation part is then when it's faction against faction, or a group of people against group of people. There's one that happened in Ballybunion. More than 2,000 people were swinging sticks, and over 200 people were killed in that clash.
Welcome to the Martial Theory Podcast. John, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. We go back a long way.
25, 30 years now?
25, 30 years now. Yeah. So it's great to be able to finally sit down and have a conversation on camera. So much of our time has been spent, working with each other. So give us a short history of John Borter in the martial arts with an emphasis on your new passion for Irish stick fighting.
Absolutely. I actually started a bit late in the game. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, like every other little kid in America, saw the Bruce Lee movies, watched the Saturday morning Kung Fu theater and that kind of stuff. But I actually didn't physically start training until I was 28 years old. So I started very, very late. And a lot of that had to do with family issues, location, jobs. I was big in retail, so I didn't have a minute to spare. And at one point, I made a career decision to go to a 9-to-5 position and opened up my evenings. And so I signed up for local Taekwondo classes and made it to secondary black belt in Taekwondo. But during that time, the instructor in Taekwondo was also doing kind of a side Hapkido class and started taking that. That's when I really started to gravitate in a different direction. I've never been naturally flexible, that kind of thing. I was always the last kid picked on the team, that kind of stuff, right? So, but as I went into the martial arts, I developed that confidence and that certain level of physical ability. So I really enjoyed the joint locking and the takedown techniques and that kind of stuff. So I kind of gravitated towards there quite a bit more. And then from there, I kind of fell into small circle jiu-jitsu, which became a very passionate kind of the course system of everything I teach with Professor Wally J. And it was just great. If you don't, people listening don't know about small circle jiu-jitsu, it's finger locks, wrist locks, arm locks, but very small motions, which was just brilliant to me. So I kind of picked up on that, ended up getting my black belt in that. And then just kind of started putting stuff together. I would work with different people at Saratoga Martial Arts Festival and pick up different concepts. Maybe pick up FMA flow, Filipino martial arts. I will never say I'm a Filipino martial artist. Let me just clarify that right away. I've dabbled, but I'll never once say that I'm a Filipino martial artist. I just don't have that skill set. But I did learn a lot from them and adopted to what I was doing. So when the time came, I did open up my own club up here in Albany, New York, and we did pretty well. And then COVID hit. So we struggled along for a few more years after that. And after a while, it just wasn't feasible to keep it going, that kind of thing. What I was teaching at the time was a combination of small circle jiu-jitsu, some FMA stuff, trapping, that kind of thing. And it worked out great. But we only taught adults, so I didn't have that huge baseline of kids, which I think most martial arts schools utilize to really turn a profit and stay in business. So when COVID hit and things started to rock a little bit, we just decided to close up. Just before that happened, I kind of tripped on Irish stick fighting, specifically Doyle Irish Stick Fighting. I got to say that is my passion. I still toy with everything else. I'll teach seminars here and there and that, or women's self-defense or Kubotan or whatever. That's my thing. I do that now. It's a full-time gig for me. I left corporate America 3.5 years ago, and I focused strictly on this. So, I'm following my passion. So I tripped on that. That quick story is I bought a shillelagh. If people don't know what a shillelagh is, it's an Irish walking stick with a knob on the end. I just thought it was cool, so I bought it online, and I said, I posted it on Facebook. I said, look, I got this shillelagh. It's really neat. And an online friend of mine, who we've become pretty tight, James Stewart over in the UK, said, that's a great stick. Now you need to learn how to use it. I'm like, use it? It's a stick. He goes, oh no, it's a lot more. He said, reach out to Bernie Leddy. And Bernie Leddy is at that point, he was an instructor in Ireland. He trained with Glenn Doyle, the head of the Doyle System, for many years. And so I reached out to him, and we started a lot of Zoom training, and we've trained in person when he's come over to the States and that kind of stuff. And it just became my passion. It just absolutely became my passion. I love the principles and the concepts and the tactics, love everything about it. Extremely practical system. My wife, Trish, got involved. She's currently the only woman Doyle instructor in the world. But I keep picking at her. There's people coming up behind her now, so she'll have to change that to one of the first women Doyle instructors in the world. We train together, we teach together. That expanded into pretty much takes up all my time. I teach 50 to 60 hours a week. Plus we have study groups, that kind of thing. And yeah, so that's my full-time job now, swinging an Irish stick. And I love it, love every minute of it. So
When people hear stick fighting
yeah,
in today's day and age,
yeah.
most people think FMA
Mm-hmm.
style stick fighting. Without getting into heavy details, what essentially separates Irish stick fighting and specifically Doyle Irish stick fighting from what people typically see with respect to FMA
Sure.
stick fighting?
The big difference about Irish stick fighting, specifically Doyle Irish stick fighting. Um, when people think about stick fighting, they think about FMA. We've had that discussion in the past. You know, the 28-inch sticks or the 24-inch sticks, that kind of thing. This is one long stick, 36, 40, 42 inches long, depending on the practitioner. And it was, I give you a little history on that. Now I kind of bring everything into focus. Way back in the 17th, 18th centuries, everybody knows for the most part that the British had occupied Ireland for close to 1,000 years, right, in one capacity or another. And they outlawed weapons. So what happened was they kind of gravitated and had to have something to protect themselves. Everybody had a walking stick back then because they were farmers and shepherds and that kind of stuff. So they started using sticks. The interesting thing is they didn't fight the British with the sticks. They fought each other with the sticks, which in some ways is thought of as a blight on Irish culture. Because, I mean, if a foreign country came and occupied the United States, would we be fighting them or fighting against each other, right?
Right.
So the way I kind of spin it is it's almost like it's a way to get your frustrations out back then, right? They did use it at times when the crooked landlords would try to evict the Irish people because that was a big part of it and just destroy every part of the culture that they could. They did use those against certain things, but primarily it was Irish against Irish, built-in factions and that kind of stuff. So the culture of it, the history of it is a little bit different from that. But it is one stick. There are a handful of Irish stick systems out there. Most of them are one-handed. One hand is swinging a longer stick with the knob on the end. Doyle's a two-handed grip. It's two hands in the middle. A lot of people kind of look at that sideways and go, "What's that about?" Right? Okay. It really comes from two primary things. One, fencing. When we say fencing, I don't mean the stuff you see on the movies with Zorro or Princess Bride, right? But sword fighting, sword fighting. Because what would happen would be the British would have Irish people go to fight wars for them in other countries. I think they fought something like, I don't know, 13 wars or something over the course of a couple hundred years on behalf of the British. So when they came back, they had sword fighting experience, but they couldn't hold swords. So they had to get rid of their sharp weapons. And so they picked up a stick and started doing little hedge schools.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's the major influence, we like to say boxing, but it's not really boxing in a clean sense of the form. It's more pugilism. If you're familiar with pugilism, it is just brutal boxing. Elbows, knees, I mean, everything you could to take this guy down, take this guy out. It's very, very brutal. So you see a lot of that type of thing. So when you hold it with two hands, it's almost like boxing with a stick. I can use both ends of the stick, right? I'm close range. It's a very close range system with a long range weapon, and that kind of gives them a different perspective on things. I've posted things online once in a while, and someone would say, well, why would you hold it in the middle? You give up your distance, you give up your range. And the answer I usually have to that is, I'm not giving up my range. I'm taking their range away. I want to get inside that long stick practitioner. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong, not saying it's better. It's not better. Every style has its value. And as you and I have said to me for years, there's always more than one right answer, right? It's just a different context, different perspective. But it was used by the Irish for a couple hundred years, actually, and until it started to die out due to the famine and political pressure and stuff like that. So,
if you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, like, and follow. What takes 5 seconds for you actually means a great deal on our end. More than that, nothing is more powerful in our martial community than word of mouth. So please tell other martial artists you know about this podcast. Better yet, send it to them. And if you haven't already, please check out my book, Martial Theory, which has been called The Art of War for the Martial Arts, and which is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. And if you want to join the movement of martial artists coming together to dig deep into martial arts theory and strategy, then join us at martialtheoryu.com, where a range of senior instructors and I provide instruction, articles, live events, Q&A sessions, discussion forums, and more. Martial Theory University is also where you can see instructors interviewed here demonstrate the concepts that they discuss on the podcast. And when you join us at martialtheoryu.com, please make sure you save 20% with the code MTPodcast. Finally, if you don't want to join us at Martial Theory University, but want to support the time and effort it takes to produce this podcast, then please support us on Patreon, which you can do for as little as $5 a month. But once again, if you join us at Martial Theory University, make sure you use the discount code MTPodcast for 20% off while it lasts. And now, this week's episode.
Doyle's really unique, and I hope that people watching on YouTube or listening will join us at Martial Theory University so they can see some of your demonstration of this, because it's such an interesting approach to stick fighting, and it's not one that most people are very familiar with. So with that said, I'm curious as to what you think one of the main tactical strengths is of Doyle System, or a couple. What are the things that make it particularly distinct, right? I mean, there are lots of different ways to fight. There are lots of great stick systems, and everything's got some things that maybe that are highlights of the system. What would you say are some of the particular tactical strengths and theoretical strengths of the Doyle system?
Sure. I think the primary thing is Doyle is in a very aggressive system. So their primary tactic is ever forward. That's actually a mantra in the system, ever forward. Well, now I might step back to give up a little space to take it back again, but we don't back up. We're always moving in, moving in, moving in.
That's so interesting to me, because one of the things I talk about in martial theory is the fact that many classical systems of fighting really had no retreating step. Or if they had a step that was in retreat per se, the idea was only to use it in a very temporary fashion, that most of them were forward-moving systems with the idea of doing exactly what you're describing, of taking up the opponent's space, getting the opponent back on their heels. So it's so interesting that all the way in Ireland, far from China and Japan, right, some of the same tactics are appearing.
Sure. And as we're moving in, I think you have two valuable concepts that come out of that, right? One, I'm close. It's a close range system with a long range weapon. So it gives me a different strategic and tactical approach rather than swinging stick from a distance. And two, it negates their distance. I can move in closer and do a better job with two hands on the stick. I can punch on both sides, and I can get close enough that it will limit their ability. I'm not going to say they can't hit me. Of course, anybody can get hit at any time, but it definitely limits the ability for them to strike with a long range weapon out to the side like that or to the top.
So for Doyle, a big part of what makes it tactically worthwhile in its own construct for itself is the control of space, it's the control of distance, it's taking up the space of the opponent. And what's it doing to accomplish that other than just grabbing the stick in the middle so it's a short range stick?
Yeah.
It's obviously there's more to it involved than that.
If you look at, and it's interesting, we're going to talk about one concept that applies across multiple things. I'm always closing in for the strike. When I block, I'm closing in for the block. I'm not blocking the stick, I'm blocking the guy's hand. You know, the concept is to get in there and break his hand so he can't swing the stick anymore. I'm burying this guy with forward moving technique, you know, which causes them to be on the retreat, back up. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Kind of thing. Yeah, but there's so much going on. All the footwork is driving in. So not only are you using forward motion footwork, but that brings in the strikes. How many different ranges of striking do we have? You know, all the strikes that we do on the outside, sometimes you see on videos and stuff, these long range strikes, that kind of stuff, that's just a bridge. That's just to get me on the inside. I'm not going to stand out here and sword fight with you. I'm not going to stand out here and tic-tac with sticks. I'm going to get inside on these people and try to take care of it as quickly as I can. It's not a sparring art. It's not a demonstration art. It's a fighting art. It's to get in there, take care of business, and go on to the next guy. Because you have to keep in mind, in the context of faction fights, they were group fights. They were like gang fights. One was, there's two types. There's a, I guess you would call it a recreational fight, and you could call it more of a brutal fight. Recreational fights, they would actually go out and, let's say you and I are in Ireland, we're sitting in a pub somewhere, right? And, you know, hope your wife doesn't hear this because I'm just joking, but you're flirting with a little bartender, a little redhead bartender down there, and some guy comes up and puts his hand on your shoulder and says, "What are you doing flirting with my sister?" And you're like, oh, I'm sorry, man, I didn't realize that. And step outside, step outside. We're in Ireland, so we have sticks, right? So we go outside, and this is back in the day, right? And you might do something what they used to call freewheeling. You'd be like, dude, look, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't know it was your sister. She's really not that attractive. She's kind of fat. You know? And they would do that before these fights to kind of rile each other up, see who was going to make the first, bad move, right? And you get in a fight, you hit him, you take him down, he goes to the ground. This is not a life and death situation. You help him up, you shake hands, go in and have a pint. Here's the recreational part. The non-recreational part is then when it's faction against faction, or a group of people against group of people. There's one that happened in Ballybunion, a beach off a race. There used to be a horse racing track there. More than 2,000 people were swinging sticks, and over 200 people were killed in that clash. So someone had told me, and I can't recall who it was at this point. It may have been Bernie that told me this. His grandmother had said, "I witnessed a stick fight." And it wasn't a long one. These two guys got in a stick fight. One guy got hit, he went down, and he was dead. And all they could find was an indentation in the back of his neck. So it's a dangerous art. It can be a very dangerous art if you're not careful, like any martial art, right? But so it's interesting how the culture of Irish back then and the history of the violence in there. And I jokingly refer to it as the WWE. You go to WWE and you see all these thousands of people just yelling and screaming, and to me, it's a de-stress to get out there, and they need to have something to kind of just, cut loose. And sometimes it was that. Sometimes you just go out there and bang a stick. And they would throw a stick at the drop of a hat, literally at the drop of a hat sometimes. I heard one story where one family had sold another family a horse, and the horse was 1 inch too short from what they were representing. Let's go grab our sticks. And they went over and they got into a stick fight over that, kind of thing. So it was a huge part of the culture. The interesting thing is I will mention something to anyone, an American Irish person, you're an Irish American person, or even an Irish person from Ireland. I was I was at an Irish event a few months back, and I had my stick with me. And he said, with a very Irish brogue, which I cannot represent very well, he says, "Well, you look like a man who means business with that stick." So as a matter of fact, it is my business. He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "I teach Irish stick fighting." He went, "Bullshite." And he walked away. And then he went to this table of other Irish guys, and they all just started laughing. They don't even know it exists or it existed because, one, it was only taught within the family. It was kept pretty tight to the vest because you don't want other gangs or factions knowing, your techniques, that kind of thing. And two, it just got stamped out over time. The Roman Catholic Church did not allow it to happen anymore. The government got involved. The government was pretty loose with that, as long as it didn't affect the British or British sympathizers. But after that fight of 2,000 people, they went, yeah, we got to crack down on this. And then it was just about culture. A lot of people emigrated to different countries, and it got lost in time. They decided it wasn't their best use of efforts at this point.
It's really, the history is really fascinating, and it's amazing how even within cultures they can lose some of these treasures really that were there. I mean, the same thing happened in a lot of the East. In Japan, martial arts are considered sort of more like what we would consider Civil War reenactments, right? By some, they're coming back now a little bit, but for a long time they were very passé. But I want to circle back to what you were saying about the constant forward pressure of the Doyle system, holding it in the middle. And I want to know what if I'm pressing you forward, and if it's an aggressive art and we're taking forward pressure and taking up space with the opponent, and so much is reliant on that for its success. What other tactical things are happening within the system, structurally, tactically, mechanically, that enable that forward pressure tactic, that rapid fire assault to work?
When you look at, say, the strikes of Doyle, right? They're not these big, long swinging strikes. There are big, long swinging strikes in the system. There are some thrashing motions, but it's always about, one, being able to attack the attacker, and two, being able to protect yourself. So whenever I throw a strike, I'll bring it back to what we call reset position, pretty much after it might be multiple strikes, but it's here. So the stick is not only your sword, but it's also your shield, kind of a thing. The strikes are short, they're quick, kind of thing. So as I get closer, they're not a big swing. They're more like a jab with a stick. And as it says in the book, right, one of the concepts or one of the theories that go with speed is distance, right? And when I teach I've taught a lot from the book already. What's a longer strike or what's the quicker strike, I should say? The one that goes out and around in an arc, or the one that goes straight in with a stick, with a 3-foot stick. And it's always that forward motion. So I'm trying to really close in. I'm trying to make sure the sticks, the strikes, I should say, very short, very to the point. Again, with the concept of bridging from the outside to the inside. Once I get to the inside, I'll hit with multiple strikes. I'll do what we call a fury, which is just bam, 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 bam. You're machine gunning these guys with these strikes. So for us, you hear it a lot. A strike is a block is a strike. And in the correct context, that's totally true. I'm trying to get him when I block a stick is break his hand so he can't fight. I'm trying to go in and step on his foot. I'm trying to go in and do what we call old broom techniques, which are dirty techniques because I think they say a dirty broom, an old broom sweeps dirty, right? So you might step on their foot. You might hit a strike to the groin. You might pop them in the eye. Look, this was for fighting. This is a fighting time system that works. So it's really, really interesting how that works. The footwork is very interesting. We do some things in footwork that I don't typically see. And it's designed to be, well, two things. One, it's a great evasive approach to footwork.
Excellent. Explain that to me, and then that's something that we're certainly going to also put on the website for people to see demonstrated. But tell us, as best as you can explain it, what's so unique or effective about that Doyle footwork?
Keeping in mind that a lot of the footwork is spaced after boxing, right? So unique may be relative, but maybe not unique to stick art kind of a thing. The one that really comes to mind the most is stepping to the left if somebody's trying to flank. We don't step over with the left foot, we step over with the right foot.
So if you're moving left, you're stepping with your right foot
Correct.
Across your left foot.
Correct.
In front or behind?
In front.
Okay.
And people will say, well, we were told never to cross our feet. Well, we're not really crossing our feet because the way my foot is angled and the way my hips are moving, I'm just walking to the left. I'm not crossing my feet. I'm not doing a dancer move where both toes are facing the same way. I'm stepping over. My concept of that, the way it's taught is if I was going to get struck in the leg, that can move that lead leg out of the way very quickly. Two, they always fought on uneven terrain because that's Ireland, right? And they fought in pastures and fields and church lots or fairgrounds, that kind of stuff. So the way of stepping with the heel-toe version of that, if there's an obstacle or there's a barrier there, you can either step over it or on it. But if I step with the toe, there's a tendency to slide, that kind of a thing, for one. I look at it this way as well. When you do the footwork, the Doyle footwork, the way it's being done, not only does it cover those two things, right, where I can move over really quickly and move my leg and protect being hit, or worrying about the uneven terrain. To me, it moves my entire structure in the first motion. So when I step over with my right, I'm already out of range. A lot of times if you step with the left, there's still a hangover. Just if somebody's coming down straight down for your head and I go left and then I have to drag myself over with the right foot, I could still be a target. I could still get hit. When you do it with the right foot first, you clear on the first motion. I'm already out of the range on the first motion. And that happens with all basic 4 directions that we teach on that. It's just a great, great way to do it.
That's actually something I reference in martial theory, and I reference you talking about that particular step as a way to get the entire body to move unitarily rather than sort of piecemeal. What else are you doing tactically that makes being in close and in fighting effective? You talked about the speed of the strikes from being able to hit with both sides of the stick, and holding it in the center, and you talked sort of about this footwork. What's another element that makes Doyle functional within that range?
When you look at Doyle striking, one of the things that I used to talk about with my empty hand stuff, right, was constant contact. I am constantly hitting. This I've kind of transcribed and brought over to my Doyle students as reference points, right? Constant contact, keep moving, hit, right? Continuous motion. We don't hit and stand back and admire our work, right? Constant hit, but contiguous flow, which is really important. If you watch a good boxer, right, or a good Doyle practitioner, when they hit, there's a body mechanic that's involved, a body reaction from the opponent, right? It sets up every single technique and I call it contiguous flow. You can hit a bunch of techniques and move around, but do they blend, right? Because if I hit you, say, in the liver, and you go forward, it opens up your kidneys. If I hit you in the kidneys, it opens up your head. And it's almost like, and there's no direct comparison to this, I'm saying it's strictly from personal preference. If you watch a really good American Kempo stylist, Boy, they are masters at body manipulation through striking. There's an element of that in Doyle. The strikes flow together. They hit, and never be able to get them off the defensive or put me into a dangerous position, because every time I swing that stick, the other side's always protecting my face.
Well, I have another question, though. And I kind of know the answer because I've practiced with you in Irish Stick and I have a sense of it, but it's nevertheless a question I think needs to be answered in the outright from what people are hearing about this. If you're holding the stick in the center, I can see where speed comes by being rapidly able to shift from hitting with the left to hitting with the right and so forth. That makes sense, right? Robin Hood back and forth quickly with the staff.
Sure.
Totally get it. But not all the strikes in Doyle happen with the two hands firmly on the stick. A lot of times you're hitting with one hand.
Yeah.
So there are two questions that come with that. First is, doesn't that make the strikes weaker because you're not getting to swing the full arc of the stick, all right? And the second is, what's it like when you're releasing that from one hand to another? Is there a value to having both hands on it when it comes to then striking with one? Or is there only a detriment because then you're sending it up in the middle?
That's a really good question. Let's look at it from the striking perspective. One of the things that's unique primarily to Doyle, I mean, there's other stick systems that do this, but this is one of the foundational concepts of this. When we hold the stick in the middle, our thumbs are on the back, right? And some people say, well, it's going to get disarmed. I don't know about that. The way we hold it and grip it, it's a very, very, I don't say tight, because tight implies that it's tension and it's not tension. But when you hold the thumb on the back, if you put your hand on like this, like a hammer grip, and the way we strike, it's a straight out. Let's talk about the first two strikes. It's a lead. Basically, it's a lead reverse, right, or a jab cross kind of thing. With the thumb on the back, it increases my extension or my whip, right? Here, I can only go so far. Here, when I disengage that thumb and pull back with the pinky, and a lot of this is small circle, right? It causes a whipping effect on the stick, and it's so much harder. I've actually done it and broken people's sticks in half. So when I hold the stick with my thumb on the back, it gives me more extension. If I hold the stick like a hammer, I can only go about that far. So that does negate the power of that strike. But the power in this strike comes from speed and structure. I'm pulling and pushing, and I'm snapping that out, and boy, that thing can do some damage. I've actually broken sticks. I've hit people's sticks with my left hand. We have a certain body mechanic that we use to really maximize the torque on the body. And I can't do anything with this hand. I've always been terrible with my left hand, as far as martial arts. And they say, practice 5,000 times with this, 10. I need like 1,000,000 times with this to even make that work. Never been great at it. But I've broken sticks with my weak hand from the back, because we're a right side lead system. So, I was in shock when I did that. And now I can do it on command. I know how that can be done. And I'll have somebody hold a stick up, or they'll throw a strike, and I'll snap that stick right in half. But you can generate so much power just with that hand position. It's a whip. Don't think of it as a whip. Think of it as a club. I'll back that up. Edit that out. Don't think of it as a club. Think of it as a whip, right? I'm not doing this. I'm doing this.
Snaps with your wrist.
Yeah, and if you're using a whip, a bull whip, something like that, you won't get a crack if you do it stiff, like a club. You do a crack if you whip it. So if you use that energy moving outward towards your opponent, towards your attacker, it's incredibly effective to be able to do that. It really, really is. So,
what role does the other hand play? Is it just letting go?
Depends on which strike, right? On a lead strike, right? We would, yes, we do just kind of leave it there, right? But at the same time, you're also using hip, using feet, footwork. Even on a lead strike, you'll see me pop my lead hip in a little bit, to take up that space. If I do a reverse strike, since my left hand's from the back, right, and it's my weak hand, right, because we have a right side lead, we do something we affectionately call a salute. We have a whole different technique that's a salute. But what we'll do is almost like we're drawing back a bow and arrow this way, here, as I throw that reverse strike. And what happens is it brings the chest into it, right? It causes torque in the hips, and it actually gives me more distance and more power on my weak left hand back strike, kind of a thing, that's how I break sticks, with my weak hand, of all things. Another aspect of the grip, and this is something that I've worked over the years, and it just works so nicely with the Doyle concept. is when you grab it like this, like a hammer, right? Now you've got tension, right? With the thumbs in the back, you've got that extension. What do you do with that? You know, we do something we call, well, I call it bending the bar. And that's a terminology that comes from people that work out in the gym. When you're benching, right, you bend the bar. So what you do is you kind of do this to the bar, right? You bend it in. What that does is it brings kind of your elbows in, kind of compresses your rib cage, puts everything back to here. It generates a lot of power. But that's also going to be what I'll talk about in the video on the website is that increases your acceleration. If I'm bending the bar and I let go one hand, boom, it wants to go. It absolutely wants to go.
So it's
rather
not
than me extending.
It's not a rubber band per se, but it's like stretching out a rubber band so that that tension is built up.
Yes.
Right? For it to suddenly spring out and release.
I call it counter pressure. Some people call it kinetic, energy or kinetic pressure against. Or Bernie likes to call it gunpowder. And gunpowder it's the same thing, same concept, where you're building up the pressure behind the projectile to blow it out. Well, I'm building up the pressure to pop it out. And I found I can dramatically increase my speed with that little bend the bar thing. And it's kind of great. We do the same thing with footwork. When I put my foot in a certain position, that's why I'm not, when I go to the left like we talked about, I'm not just crossing my toes, I'm stepping because my toes are facing in that direction. That's a break. I'll have a brake on in the front and I'll be pushing with the back, right? And I'm ready to go. It's almost like a dog on a chain just wants to get out there and fight, right? So I'm here, but as soon as I let go of this foot, you just go forward. So it's not like I have to go and shift my weight and step forward and walk. All these little things about that slight little hip twist and that slight little whip and that footwork, all the things we're talking about, you can accelerate and get in so fast and so hard rather than re-engaging your body every time you have to do it, every time you have to move. You're coiled like a spring. And then all of a sudden you let that go and you uncoil. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating how that can work.
One of the things I write about in martial theory is the idea of controlling the chaos as a governing idea, right? That we want to foist the opponent into chaos and we want to experience less chaos for ourselves. We want to feel control over the fight. What I certainly hear is that the barrage tactic, this almost blitzkrieg tactic of Doyle, is a method of throwing the opponent into chaos, which I love. But I have a question which is sort of on the other side of that coin. It's one thing to be able to attack the enemy with a quick barrage of attacks that come very fast, disrupt their timing and their own ability to generate power and get on the offensive, and that's great. But one of the other things I talk about in martial theory is the importance of being able to mitigate error on our own parts. That one of the major things we want to do when fighting is never give anything to the opponent that the opponent can use against us, right? First and foremost, be sound within ourselves, right? And I often give the example of even just people who will compromise their posture in order to reach a little farther with that punch in order to try to hit with it. Sometimes that might work and you make contact, but the sacrifice is also immutable, right? No matter what you do with that, maybe it's successful, maybe it's not, but certainly if it's not, you've just given the opponent something to work with.
Absolutely.
So when I hear about the aggressiveness of Doyle and the center position and all of that, it sounds great in terms of foisting the opponent into chaos, which is wonderful. But what about error? How does Doyle work on, or how do you work on reducing your own capacity for error when you're going in and focusing so much on getting the opponent into chaos?
Sure. Well, there's a couple things. One, we do have a vast variety of ranges and techniques, right? The way I've always taught it is basically 4 ranges, right? Close, mid-range, long range, and extra long range. And they have techniques that apply to each of those. So one of the things we really dig in is understanding distance. I don't want to overextend to try to get this guy. I've got plenty of tools at my disposal to reach him when he's way out there, right? And we work that. Here's a close, here's a middle, here's a long, and here's an extra long, by the way. Well, not even moving my feet, it's in most cases. So there's ways to kind of understanding distance to do that. And I think distance is probably one of the things that really cause those errors. You're either not far away, or you're too close, or not close enough, right? Because you have to extend. Oh, I didn't make it. So I teach basically 3 elements of distance. You have to understand distance in the different types of footwork we're using. We need to learn distance in the different types of strikes we're using. And you need to have a general understanding of what I call dynamic distance or combative distance. When you hit someone, they move. I always say all the time, number one rule, and I use that term a lot. Every rule is number one rule to me, right? When you hit someone in the face with a stick really hard, he's going to move. That's who it is. And the problem I see with people when we do a static training is you play at hitting someone, right? And you don't, but they don't move. He's not necessarily being a good bad guy. And that messes up all the other techniques that follow from that. So you have to have an understanding of how to get close, where to get to. Many times we're not going to put ourselves into that storm, right? We'll step off to the side and we'll get next to or behind the guy and then work from the other angles. You know, it's not just fed on. It's not just right here. I'm going to be over here. You know, if you throw a stick at me, I'm going to pivot off that stick and step to the side if I have the opportunity. So understanding your tools in your toolbox and how to use those, not only just the distance, but the strikes or the blocks that you can pivot into something else or move into something else if you see something coming. One of the things about Doyle is, like I said, we're always protecting our face. Not like this, but if I'm hitting low, my stick's up here. And if I hit low and he just has to come in with a punch, I've got that position to take that punch out or block with this.
Meaning the other side of the stick.
The other side of the stick. I'm hitting here and all of a sudden I see that punch coming. I'm just going to bring this up and pop him right in the hand or the face. So the advantage of having a two-handed grip on the stick is it does make it a little more, I don't want to say easier because none of it's easy, but if an error happens, I've got both sides of the stick to use. Not just here and then what do I do now because there's a punch coming? Oh, I have to use my hand. Okay, yeah, but you know, are you going to be able to put that off? When I use both sides of the stick and I'm into that mid-range or that close range, I can shift very easily. A lot of it, I think, has to do with training and practice. Really, you know, you have to practice what happens if, you know, kind of thing. But that said, I've always been a proponent of, okay, what if is great, but what is what's going to get you killed. You know what I mean? And those are the things you need to focus on. And not saying you shouldn't practice outside the what ifs, but there could be so many what ifs. What's going to happen when you hit someone, or they're going to come in and hit you? You know, keep it simple. You look at professional judo player, right? You know, there's a lot of techniques in judo, and so as far as I know, I think there's something like 79 techniques and 59 throws or whatever. And I'm not a judo guy, so don't hold me to those numbers. But I heard Dan Inosanto say at one point, well, a judo player only uses 4 or 5 techniques, the championship judo player. So, I mean, there's always that core that you build off of, and we try to do the same thing. You know, I don't want to bury somebody in hundreds of techniques. I want to give them those tools.
That seems to speak even more to another concept I talk about in martial theory, which is not just mitigating error, but redundancies, about always having a backup for your backup for your backups. And in theory, each of those backups should be of the same caliber and effectiveness as the primary or secondary or tertiary technique. Is it the case, therefore, that what you're saying is that one of the redundancies in Doyle is simply that the strike I'm doing with one half of the stick manifests by its nature, and maybe this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but partially or starts to construct by its nature the defensive position with the other side of the stick?
That's one way to look at it, and I don't think you're overstating the point, because we actually have a particular technique that not only does it protect you with the other side of the stick, but you're using it. I'm following up. It's almost like pop, 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 back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you can use that to support that initial attack or that initial entry. But yeah, no, absolutely. You have to have that redundancy. You have to have that, what's the word I used earlier? Contiguous motion, right? Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. But I could move. Keeping moving is not contiguous necessarily. I could hit you and then jump behind you and hit you again. That's moving. Yeah, I get that. But it's not flowing. So flow is a huge strategy within Doyle. You got to be able to move, got to be able to flow. Our goal is to take them out. Absolutely take them out. We're not going to spar with this guy. It's not going to be a one-to-one thing where you hit, I hit, you hit, I hit, you block, I block. We don't play that game. We might do that in a training capacity just so people can build some muscle memory, right? But in Doyle, when we're after, the goal is to get in and take him out and never give him a chance to get that strike off, because you're that close. It's that aggressive. That's why it's so beautiful. It's such a great system. You take the guy out in 3. I tell my students all the time, if you can't take somebody out in 3 or 4 strikes, you're probably doing something wrong. So let's go back and take a look at it again. You know, we might train longer combinations so people can have that buffet choice of picking out, see how things relate. But yeah, the other thing is everything, right? That's the second motto or second mantra in Doyle. This could be a block. This could be a strike. This could be blocking this technique or this technique or this technique. I didn't have to change my technique. but it can block a punch. It can block a stick punch. It might be able to block a knee strike coming up by changing the elevation. So simplicity, I think, is a big key. Big key. There's a lot of techniques in Doyle, but they all seem to come from the same place. You know, if I do it on the left, it's this. If I do it on the right, it's this. To me, it's the same one. You know, it's just left or right.
So with that rapid fire assault and what you're calling that contiguous striking, I hear a lot about what we talk about in the book with respect to the importance of maintaining your tempo, dictating the tempo, and breaking the opponent's tempo. And that seems really important, and it's a tactic that so many people have lauded in the martial arts. I think Bruce Lee referenced that importance of breaking the other person's tempo. It was one of the whole points of Jeet Kune Do, is to intercept the oncoming attack and therefore break their capacity to generate that sort of contiguous action that you're talking about. So that's really consistent in a sense with what Bruce Lee was trying to do with JKD. But here's a different question, and I want to challenge you with this and I want you to be fair, because I have great respect for Doyle. I love the system. It's obviously really effective, and there's no debate about that here. But what I do want to ask is what must be on so many other people's minds who are listening to this or watching it. If I'm the stick fighter, and I've got the same length stick, but I'm holding it at the end, can't I keep you at range where I can hit you, I can smash your hands on your stick, I can smash your knee, I can go for your head or what have you, and with a little footwork of my own and maybe even a little retreating, nevertheless keep you at a distance where you're not going to be able to use your Doyle Irish stick, grab it in the center system against me?
So let me back up a bit, because you used the word that I'm fairly fond of, is tempo, right? And I think you're talking about the overall tempo of the fight, right?
By tempo, I mean the rhythm at which you want to work versus the rhythm at which the opponent might want to work.
Sure, absolutely. So when it comes to tempo or rhythm, there's two key points that I just wanted to kind of bring into the conversation. One, as a Doyle fighter, the closer we get, the more we increase our tempo, right? So once you get in, you're hitting, and you just keep going. That puts them in an extremely uncomfortable situation. It's not a one-for-one kind of thing. It's just not. It's you get in there, and then you just start you really fast. The second thing, and I'm going to put a shout out to another Doyle instructor. I was working with Tom Moore. Tom Moore is an excellent Doyle Irish Stick Fighter. He actually trained with Glenn Doyle at one point, and he was talking about half beats. And I never really looked at it from that perspective. I've done it, but he had said that we attack on the half beat. So it's not like 1 to 1 to 1. It's like 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. It's more like 1 and boom. So you can cut down their tempo by attacking on the half beats and getting closer quicker. And once you get in there, you increase the tempo of your strikes. I think I'm going to change the context a little bit, and what you're referring to is almost like a distancing thing. I have a longer stick. How are you going to get to me? Right? Keep two things in mind. One, usually to swing a longer stick. Now, don't confuse this with, say, Filipino sticks. They're a little bit shorter, they're lighter, they're faster, they're brutal, right? We're not going to fight. Well, first of all, let's face it, none of us are going to get into a faction fight, and if it is, it's a 1 in a million chance. But how much longer does it take to throw a 3-foot stick with a weighted knob on the end? Not weighted, it's not loaded with lead, I'm not saying, but it's heavier. That's your center of impact. I can close in so much quicker because it's a longer arcing strike. And if it's a longer arcing strike, I have the room to step in and get in there. And now the stick is back here over my shoulder, and I'm already in on top of this guy, hitting his hand, hitting his face, hitting his ribs, whatever the case may be. So I think that the way we shoot in, the way we close the gap, is very effective with changing that tempo. This guy thinks he's going to, we like to call them pub strikes, where they go 1, 2, 1, 2, right, kind of thing.
By a 1, you mean a typical overhand?
I'm talking more of an angle strike.
But yeah, over the top kind of.
Yeah, over the top kind of thing. Yeah. And I akin it to like a haymaker. And I jokingly say sometimes to people that if I'm prepared, I'm ready to go, I'm hoping somebody throws a haymaker. Because when I see that thing go back, it gives me about a 15-minute warning. I'm probably going to go over and maybe get a drink and check my email and then come back. And maybe when I get back into the fight, it'll have landed or come close to it. It's just the slowest punch on the. So if I'm doing these big X strikes, it is relatively simple to get in. We're always going to be this. We're not going to be way back here, right? We're going to be in fighting range where you can hit me with your stick, I can hit you with mine. As soon as that goes back, I'm in.
But what if we're starting at a point where I step back slightly and you can't hit me with your stick, but I can hit you with mine? Is it effectively what you're saying, it seems to me, and there's a perfect logic to it, is kind of the wrestling, the grapplers, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu approach, which is that we're going to, I don't want to say take the chance of, but tactically what we're going to do is we're going to eat that first punch, eat that first major attack that comes in. By eat it, I don't mean get hit by it, but I mean defend it, contend with it in some way, and get in so fast that there's no other opportunity for the long-range striker to do their work. Is that an analogy?
That's a decent analogy. Sure, absolutely. And the footwork that we have in Doyle is you can close. There's a certain piece of footwork that I do that I can close 6 feet on one step. That's it. I can get that far and close. It could be a push step. It could be a transition step that we use. I can get in there quick. And then, now I'm not negating people that use those big strikes. I will tell you this though. I was teaching a seminar in Connecticut, as a matter of fact. No, I think it was New Hampshire. And a gentleman who was an FMA guy. Much respect for this guy. Fantastic. But he asked me, and he's like, "Hey, John, how come you're holding the stick in the middle?" And I go, "I don't know. Well, let's find out." Right? And he had the stick, and he's a Filipino guy. Now, it's a Filipino guy using a shillelagh, which is longer with more weight. So I'm not picking on Filipino. I'm picking on pub strikes a little bit, right? Because that's an angle one. I would not want to come up against Filipino guys swinging a Cali stick, all right? Let's just be clear on that. I said, all right, throw an angle one. And he brought that stick back, and I just went, whoop, and I had my stick laying on his cheek before his stick came down. And I said, any questions? He's like, nope, I'm sold. So it's different. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different to be able to do those kind of things. We were working with a gentleman who's a very, very well-known videographer with Sensei Seth. And we've got a beautiful, beautiful video out there. And he even said, first of all, holding the stick with two hands was a very foreign concept to him. But once he learned some of the concepts and the techniques that we did, it was very empowering. You can really control that environment. And two, closing in on somebody with a stick seemed very foreign until he did it. And it's like, wow, this really works. So it's different. Not saying that other systems don't do it, but we're just talking about Doyle right now. It's a great system as far as doing that. But yep, I can usually get on the inside. Now, somebody said, if you threw a big swing at me, is there anyone that said I can't back up to avoid that swing and then enter when the stick hits to the other side? We like to call that a crisscross because they'll go 1, 2. Again, keep in mind, longer stick, heavier weight. There's many times I've stepped back. I can clear 18 inches, 2 feet from where the target originally was and then close in on the second strike. And now he's over here. And I can take him on that side of the body. So there's opportunity there to be able to take care of those kind of things. If you want to step back, step back. I'm just going to chase you down. And sometimes when we do some of the multiple strikes, the tapping strikes where we just pop, 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 like a machine gun, they're just so fast. You're just chasing this guy down. It's a brutal opportunity.
Before we continue, just a quick reminder that if you want to see our guests demonstrating the theory they discuss here on the podcast, then join us at Martial Theory University by going to martialtheoryandtheletteru.com and make sure that you use the coupon code MTPodcast for 20% off while it lasts. Also, if you're enjoying thinking theoretically here, or even if you just enjoy thinking at all, and you want to learn more about it for your career, as a parent, or just for your own development, then please visit my Substack, Perlman Actual Intelligence, for tips, instruction, and discussion on critical thinking. Just go to Substack, Perlman Actual Intelligence.
In terms of your development within the art and in terms of your understanding of the art, I'd like to understand what's something that you understand about the art now, an insight you have into the art now, or maybe a skill set you've developed within the art that you didn't have a year or two ago.
Sure.
And what's on the horizon for you? What's something you see that your instructors are able to do, or something that you see as possible to do that you can't quite do yet? Where's your where have we come in terms of an insight, and where are we going in terms of an insight?
I'm going to say the biggest insight that I have since training in Doyle, let's put it that. I'm going to look at it more of a global situation, was footwork. Not just footwork, not just stepping off the side and not just stepping back, stepping forward, but really how to maximize the body mechanics on the footwork, or how the footwork maximizes the body mechanics. When I was in Taekwondo, we did stances. I wouldn't call them complicated footwork, but there were stances. And when I got into, say, small circle and I got into doing Hapkido, the Hapkido I studied, there wasn't a lot of formality to that. It was joint locking and takedown stuff. And so I kind of haven't done footwork for a number of years when I started training in Doyle about 5 years ago. I started training in Doyle and then realizing, wow, I mean, the footwork is just amazing. It's amazing. I mean, I think there's a lot of fencing footwork, a lot of boxing footwork, a touch of kung fu footwork, because Glenn Doyle was a 4-time Wushu champion in Canada. So he throws a little kung fu in there, which is well renowned for its footwork. I've been able to develop such body mechanics that I never thought, I just never did. So I didn't think either way, but it was amazing how my body has changed, how I can generate power, how I can rotate, how I understand now there's not a single movement in Doyle for me that doesn't involve the hips, kind of thing. So my biggest takeaway from Doyle at this point, aside from being a fantastic fighting system, is how important that footwork is. And I think that's something that's overlooked. I don't want to say neglected, but definitely overlooked in the martial arts, in some of the martial arts these days.
What is it about the Doyle footwork that cued you into its value and importance? What insight did you suddenly get about that particular kind of footwork? Because every art has footwork, and footwork's always important. But what was it about Doyle's footwork that something clicked for you? What was an insight you gained into that specifically?
As we said earlier, and I'll go back to that for a second, is some of the footwork, the directional footwork we do, I'm out of the way on the first move. It's not a step slide. It's a step, and I can move myself right off the line. And when I started realizing that and looking at that going, whoa, wait a second, there's more going on here than just stepping. There's a strategy behind it. There's a hip engagement behind it. There's a thigh wind up. There's a springing involved just with one type of footwork rather than just stepping. Anybody can step. We've been doing it since we were 9 months old. But you step with a purpose. You step with a reason. So it's not just a big step to the left. When I stepped over with my right, my whole core just moved right out of the way. When I step back the way we do it, everything moves on the first motion. When I go back to the right, everything moves on the first motion. When I go forward, there's that heel-toe step. A lot of people do heel step. But do we understand that the heel gives you that forward motion, and then the toe gives you the grounding kind of a thing? So now when you strike at the point that ball of the foot hits the ground, you're so much stronger, but you came in and went down. And just the footwork was beautiful for me, and how it related to the body mechanics. It's made my body mechanics, I've improved so much since I've worked with Doyle than I have years ago. You and I have worked together a lot with joint locking, grappling, that kind of stuff, which dramatically improved my standing as a martial artist. It really taught me a lot. I'm doing the same kind of thing right now with Doyle. I'm looking at, what did I learn from you? What did I learn from small circle? How's that affecting Doyle? Now, I will never bring those things into Doyle. I mean, I'm not going to try to do it. We jokingly were saying, hey, if you want to bring your Doyle stuff into FMA, go for it, but don't bring FMA into Doyle, right? One of the things we have, I'm going off a little tangent here right now, is this is a family system. It's not just a stick fighting system, and we have a responsibility to respect the heritage, the lineage of that family. So we play a little bit, and we'll improve and we'll tweak in our own context, but we don't change a lot. But and rather than changing things, I look really, really deep into this stuff, and there's so much there. There's so much there that really helps. Where I'd like to see my own performance a year from now, I want to take a look at attribute training, being more fluid, being able to move, bob and weave, step, certain step. I've been looking a lot at boxing footwork. Now, we're not boxing, so I can't say we're going to be boxing, but there's an element of boxing there. So if you look at the footwork and some of the drills they do and that kind of stuff, there's a way to draw that out and apply it to Doyle to make everything we do, at least everything I do, quicker, faster, more fluid. So I'd love to see me moving a little bit more like a boxer when I'm swinging a stick, because boxing is, in my opinion, probably the most underrated martial arts in the world. These people that can really box, you look at the famous people like, Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, even Mike Tyson, even though he was a monster, I mean, he knew how to use body mechanics. I think we could learn from that. Not do it the same way, but learn the value of those type of things, body mechanics, footwork, that kind of stuff, and improve anything with any martial art. So, but I like to see myself get a little more faster, more fluid, that kind of stuff.
You've been teaching a long time, not as long for Doyle as just you've been a martial arts instructor for decades. And
34 years. Yeah.
okay, so and you're a better instructor now than you were in the past, and that's not a criticism of how you used to teach. You've always been a great teacher since I've known you. I think you're a fabulous martial arts teacher and very good at explaining things and scaffolding things for people. But as a more senior instructor now, what's a piece of advice you have for other martial arts instructors who are listening in terms of how to teach better?
How to teach better. What I like to do is I keep the verbiage very simple, right? I try to give people reference points. And I say reference points, this is where your stick needs to be to do this, this, and this. Or think of it this way. You're walking down the street and there's a hole that you need to step over, that kind of thing. I mean, people really appreciate it. I stay away from the more ancient esoteric stuff, that some of the Asian arts I've trained in I kind of use it. Nothing wrong with it. But I just like to keep it a little more simple, straightforward, and that kind of thing. And I know some martial artists that do that as well, that we're associated with. And it's easier for me to understand. And I think it's much more appreciated. From a teaching perspective, I keep it simple. Now, that's not meaning I always keep it simple. We were talking over lunch today, and I said, Einstein said that it's a sign of a genius who can take something complex and make it simple. And I say, well, I think a sign of a genius is someone that takes something simple and make it complex. And we kind of laughed about that, but it's true. I spent an entire hour and a half lesson last week just talking about one element of footwork. And they walked out of there going, wow, that was the best class ever. Because there's weight distribution, there's foot placement, there's torquing, there's all this kind of, you don't just step. You step with a reason, kind of thing. So, that's another thing. If you don't overshoot it a little bit, and you don't get over people's heads, you can really dig in and understand that there's more going on than that's probably very, very obvious. So I will say this, stick with something. You want to go out and play, you want to try other systems, and that's fine, but have a baseline. Just have a baseline and stick with it, until you get to black belt instructor level, however. And then if you want to pan out a little bit and do some things. But I see so many people that they train in 5 different martial arts at the same time. And I've talked to students, can I do that? Actually, you can do that until it becomes an issue. I can't say no, but it will become an issue at times where you'll start blending and mixing stuff. Don't do that. Stay true to a style. And then, quite frankly, if you get in a fight and you use it from this style or that style, and you defend yourself, who cares where it came from? Who cares? But too many people try to do too many things at the same time. And my suggestion is, stick to it, work it.
As the old saying goes, in the martial arts, there are no secrets, only details, right? And I think that's what you're talking about with the idea of turning the simple into the complex.
Yeah.
It's not really complicating the issue. It's more of bringing forward the details that might otherwise be hidden to people that they don't see.
Yeah.
Final question for you. We have martial artists around the world listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube. And my question for you is, for a statement of posterity, what message do you think the martial arts world needs to hear these days?
Well, I've said this a lot too, and I think you and I are in the same word with this, is that sometimes there's more than one right answer, right? Don't think that this system is better than that system, or this person is better than that person. Any person on any given day can win or lose a fight. Any system on any given day can win or lose a fight. We have a lot more in common than we have differences. We really, really do. And if you draw from that and you support each other in that, everybody's going to benefit. Everyone, a rising tide lifts all ships. But I see so much on social media and stuff, my style is better than your style, or they attack one person because you put a video out there and they only saw one little piece of, look, you don't know what's going on. To give you a good example of that, I know I'm going long-winded on this one. I was watching a video of a Tai Chi practitioner, an old video, a Chinese Tai Chi practitioner, and they were just bashing this guy in the comments. And I'm like, guys, watch how he moves. This is the guy you don't want to meet in an alley. This guy will tear you apart. But they didn't appreciate that. They didn't recognize that. They didn't see that. Look, you never know what somebody's got up their sleeve and how good they are, how bad they are, and anybody can win in any given day. Stop arguing about that kind of stuff, right? Look at it, learn from it. You can always learn something, whether it's what to do or what not to do, but you can always learn something. So look at everything as a learning opportunity. Support each other on that kind of stuff. Don't argue, don't bicker, don't fight. None of that matters. None of that matters.
John, what a great pleasure.
Steve,
Thanks so much for joining
Good seeing
me.
you again, my friend.
Please share the work we're doing here with other martial artists, and of course, please subscribe and follow. To see instructors interviewed here demonstrate the theory they discuss, join us at Martial Theory University by going to martialtheoryu.com and make sure you use the discount code MTPodcast for 20% off while it lasts. Finally, if you generally enjoy thinking and want to learn more about it, then please join my Substack, Perlman Actual Intelligence.